Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we do have quorum. So I'd like to ask at this time that people take their seats. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting of Community and Emergency Services Committee to order. Members of the public, you're advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals and media may also be audibly or visibly recording this meeting. Please note that the recommendations from this standing committee meeting today will move forward to the council meeting Wednesday, January the 20th, 2016 for consideration. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, there are several revisions to the agenda. Beginning with item 4, we have 2 added delegation requests. Added as 4.3 is Carmen Salasochi, I apologize for that, on behalf of the Good Shepherd Mission Services and Salvation Army regarding the Trusteeship Program for today's meeting. Item 4.4 is Adrian Newport, again regarding the Trusteeship Program. Item 8, discussion items. We have added correspondence items regarding the Trusteeship Program. The first being a letter from Tom Cooper, Director of Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction. The Clerk's Office has received a petition as well regarding the Trusteeship Program. It contains, at the time, 60 signatures. Today, I have received another 33 for a total of 93 signatures received. And a copy of the petition is available for viewing in the office of the City Clerk.
The agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favor? Carried.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't get the name of that delegate. Thank you.
Okay, on to item 2, declarations of. Seeing as that there are none, we will move to item 3, which 8th, 2015 Emergency and Community Services meeting. Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Marula. All those in favor? Carried. Excellent. We're now on to item 4, which are delegation requests. There are several delegations in today's meeting and are all with respect to item 8.2 of the agenda regarding the trustee program. And we also have now an added regarding domiciliary hostels. So the delegation requests are from Hugh Tai. Is Hugh Tai here today? Will you be presenting for Mr. Tai? So you will withdraw that delegation request? Okay. It's completely at your will. We're here for you today.
I'll make a very brief presentation.
Come on down.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, at this point on the agenda, we're just approving the delegation requests for today's meeting.
Oh, my apologies, Madam Clerk. I stand corrected. So you get a little prep time now to think about what it is you want to say, which is good. If you want to take some notes, you can do that as well. So we have delegation requests from Hugh Tai, Ed Zakharowski, and Carmen Sachlacholi, Adrian Newport. And I apologize if I've mangled any of the names or not.
For clarification,
The service is provided by Mohawk Shared Services Initiative, a hospital-owned cooperative, not-for-profit organization.
where's it located?
Fortunately, I don't have that information to hand. I can provide it very shortly.
Okay.
Their head office.
So this is just a linen replacement, or is this linen cleaning as well?
Linen cleaning, delivery, replacement. It's a full service, everything to do with emergency service linen.
Now, there is a shop on Redfern that does that. I believe that's the name of it, and it supplies it for all the hospitals as well here in Hamilton. Is it the same organization?
Through the chair, I believe the address is Redfern Avenue. I'd have to check, but I believe that is correct.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So I got a couple issues and concerns. One is, first of all, I like to see competitive bids come in on these things. I'm not clear who else provides the service with this report. And secondly, I can tell you that the residents in that neighborhood have had nothing but issues and problems with the environmental, the smell, and all the issues that emanate from that particular organization. We've been trying to get them in line. And then for us to further enhance their business without them addressing real serious concerns in the neighborhood, obviously creates a problem for me. So I don't mind doing that with the caveat that we embark on this, but obviously they have an obligation to be good neighbors. I'd like to see something in language in this agreement that reflects that.
Just, sorry, Councillor, I don't want to cut you off, but there is something here, Mohawk Shared Services Incorporated. I haven't seen in the report reference to Redfern, but I could be mistaken. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think based on the concerns that Councillor Whitehead has raised, I'm wondering then if we should just look for an existing extension to the policy 11 until we've had a chance to further, because the contract has expired, so we need to get something in place. But if you need further consultation with your office on this, etc., perhaps we could extend the, I don't know, do a policy 11 to get us through until we've had an opportunity to further discuss. The chief and I did have a conversation about the tendering issue, and that we can't guarantee that this is the lowest price, because the only way you do that is through a competitive process. So what the chief and Ben did was do a full review in terms of what other arrangements are in the province. If you'd like, Ben, are we able to do a policy 11 to extend the contract for a period of time until we've had time to further discuss with you? And because it'd be too much to build in at this point in time through you to the councillor in terms of other requirements, as you've indicated. I'd prefer it if we didn't move forward on the report and did a policy 11 instead.
I have absolutely no problem with that suggestion. And I think that anyone that the city enters into arrangements with, the caveat I would have is that they would have to adhere to all our city policies, our zoning bylaws, our environmental, and be good corporate citizens. And at least if I had that language, then when I'm holding those community meetings, I'll hold them to account. When people have to breathe in the sulfates and everything else they utilize in that particular plant, that I have something I can fall back to in respect to the language that we've entered into. So that would be my hope, that any future contracts we entered into, it's not, I'm saying no, but I want a proviso that they need to be good corporate citizens and good neighbors. And if we don't incorporate that in simple language, then it makes it that much more difficult for me to have the hammer to get some changes that improves the quality of life for those immediate residents in that neighborhood. So that's all I've been asking, but certainly the suggestion you put forward, I'm fine with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Are there any other questions before I pass the chair over? Councillor Jackson.
So Mr. Chairman, will you then provide clarity as to exactly then what we will be doing? Are we then going to be deferring the recommendation here and extending the current contract for an indefinite period until the ward councillor has opportunity for consultation? Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear as to what we'll ultimately be approving, but I'll leave that to your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I appreciate the vote of confidence. Through the chair to Ms. Priel, if you could please provide a bit of clarity just to make sure that everybody's clear, leaving this staff report and recommendation, that we have very clear direction moving forward regarding this.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I just want Mr. Roth to confirm what he was just saying there to me, sorry, that we have an existing policy 11 in place, which allows us to single source. And that policy 11 expires when, Ben? End of December 2016. It's expired. Okay, so it's expired. So we would put into place another policy 11 to extend the contract with this organization until we have consulted with the councillor and confirmed what terms we may want to put into the contract that we have with the organization. One of the locations is on Chedmac. Is that the organization?
Oh, okay.
So we would, I don't know what the official, what you do with the report, you refer it back, I'm not sure.
Can we receive
the-
the report without taking these recommendations and then allow Ms. Pareel and Councillor Whitehead to work out the details, Madam Clerk? Is that?
Mr. Chairman, that is one option. Another option would be to defer and extend the current contract until the details are confirmed.
What is the will of the committee? You're okay with that? Okay. Councillor Whitehead, would you like to move that?
It wasn't to actually say no to what's before us, but it's just to raise an issue. And every time that the councillor can go back to a particular language and talk about corporate responsibility, it's a good thing. It gives us that leverage to hopefully resolve noise issues, smell issues, and so forth. So that's all I was looking for primarily. I want good corporate citizens, and if they're not resolving these outstanding issues within a community, I want to ensure that if we're entering into contracts that we got a bit of a hammer that I can fall back to.
Excellent. Are there any other comments on the motion before I move the chair over to ask my own questions? Seeing as that there's no other comments or questions, I'd like to pass the chair over to the Vice Chair, Mr. Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Please go ahead, Councillor.
So through you, Mr. Vice Chair, to staff, I think for the sake of the sole source rationale, could staff provide us an overview, a rationale, perhaps a little bit of a summary of the historical background as to why this particular service makes sense in relation to the linens and the services that are provided here, just to make sure that everybody understands why we took the policy 11 on this one.
Through the chair, this is a continuation of a long-standing arrangement that has been in place since about the year 2000 with Mohawk. And like most linen arrangements with paramedic services in the province, it grew out of a relationship where the paramedic services previously obtained the linen services through the hospital. It is a very efficient and effective relationship in that our crews are able to drop off soiled linens at the hospital and pick up fresh linens at the hospital. It's an integrated service that provides service to both the paramedic service and to the hospitals. So, for example, our crews don't have to hang around waiting for a patient to clear and recover the linen. They can simply leave the patient as well as the linen there at the hospital, pick up, clean it, and be back on the road. There is a comparison or a comparative analysis in Annex A that shows how linen services are provided across the province in a number of various services. All of the local emergency services organizations use Mohawk primarily because it's an effective and efficient service that allows a transaction to occur at the hospital. We don't have to get ourselves into the challenge of transporting soiled linen, which requires special training, special equipment, and indeed special licensing, because potentially we could be transporting dangerous goods depending on what is in the linen. We don't have to deal with any of that. As I say, the other services use it. There are different arrangements in place in different services. What the analysis tries to show is an apples-to-apples comparison based on the number of transports, ambulance transports, that each service does. And on that basis, and also some services buy their own linen and have a commercial service provider just clean it. Some services do the distribution themselves, purchase their own linen. So there are differences depending on where the service is and how the service is provided. But historically, we have found that Mohawk provides a reliable, effective, and efficient service to the Hamilton Paramedic Service, thus this recommendation.
Thank you. And through you, lastly, just so that folks that are watching perhaps don't have the benefit of the report in front of them, if you could perhaps speak to the nature of Mohawk Shared Services as a nonprofit co-op and how that is integrated historically. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Roth.
Mr. Chair, Mohawk Shared Services is a not-for-profit hospital-owned cooperative organization. That's the business organization of it.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Roth. Through you, Mr. Chair. At this time, Councillor Johnson, I'm happy to take back the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do appreciate committee's indulgence just to get that information out there nonprofit co-op integrated with our healthcare systems makes sense for the policy 11 on this one. So at this time, we have a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Is there a need to restate the motion? Councillor Whitehead, is that possible?
It's a condition 11, and give our staff an opportunity to meet with the board councillor. And is there anything else we cover up for this report?
Yeah, we're deferring.
And deferring the report for subsequent meeting.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to include the statement about consulting with the board council, or do you just want to keep it general enough to say that the details get worked out through the contract?
That's
Well,
Okay.
at the will of the...
That's fine. I know the staff is great. They'll meet with me anyway.
There you go. So we have that motion moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor, carried. Thank you very much. Now on to item 5.2, which is the recommendation report regarding RBB Innovations Limited Contract Renewal. Are there any questions to staff or discussion on consent item 5.2? Okay. We moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Marula. All those in favor? Carried. Now on to item 5.3, which is the information report regarding changes to the intake process for the domiciliary hostel program.
Just that we table that until we hear the delegation.
Is there a motion or a will maybe to have the delegate speak now to the motion or have it after? After?
When you get to the delegation.
Got it.
So we'll just table it till then.
So we have a motion to table it until the appropriate time at which we'll have the delegation. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. On item 5.4, which is the information report regarding Wentworth Lodge long-term care quality inspection, we have Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, of course, thank Senior Director Vicki Woodcox and all the great staff at Wentworth Lodge for the work they're doing. I think the bottom of page 2 says it all, that the quality improvement has long been a focus for both of our lodges. Macassa and Wentworth Lodge staff have annually gathered resident and family satisfaction data to direct and evaluate their efforts, with the excellent results, 94% overall resident satisfaction rating in our Wentworth Lodge survey. And all of the written notifications, which are about average for the province, are being dealt with. Mr. Chairman, congratulations through you to Vicki. Vicki, just a reassurance that any of the WNs are outstanding and are being dealt with. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Vicki for professional opinion, please.
Through the chair to Councillor, thank you very much. Yes, we have put a plan in place. We weren't required to, but we have, and most of the items have been addressed, and the remainder will be shortly.
Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'm happy to move it. Thank you.
Excellent. We have Councillor Whitehead.
I really appreciate how daunting a task is when you look at how you weight some of the issues when the inspections come in. Some of them seem very mundane and very low risk and low challenge, where others are higher. And the problem is everything gets folded into one reporting. So obviously, hopefully that change. And I can tell you, as a person that has recently experienced compliance audits, I wish you all the best. Thank you.
At this time, I'd ask that I please pass the chair over to Councillor Johnson.
Please go ahead, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you, I would like to ask the staff if they could perhaps comment on the nature of the increased regulation and scrutiny. And I think it's important, worth noting in this report that we caught that that indeed there's a higher level of scrutiny, but we've kind of raised to the challenge. So through you, Mr. Chair, if we can have staff comment to this shift, this new framework for compliance, and as well as if they can speak to any orders or safety concerns that might be present. Through you to, yes, sorry.
Okay, through you to the chair. The legislations that have been put in place, they became in effect in 2010, but it took several years to complete the regulations. So for both lodges, this is just our second year of the ministry annual inspections. There are literally hundreds of regulations and requirements within the Act. And in the past, there would be 2 compliance officers for 2 days to do an annual review. In this particular home, they were 3 of them on site for 8 full days. Wow. So that coupled with the information that's now available, because we are electronic resident records, there's huge opportunity to purview all of the material and assess for potential errors. Having said that, we continue to be committed to provide the best quality of care that we can, and we welcome any input and suggestions. And although some of them are minor in nature, any opportunity I have to improve, I certainly want to do that. They were minor in nature, though. In fact, we just got written notifications, and although some they suggested a plan of action, it's voluntary. But as I said, we've chosen to do that. Often the issues are around the documentation. It doesn't mean that the appropriate care was provided, but sometimes it's in one area of the record and not in the other. They did reassure us that there were no health or safety or imminent issues related to that. So overall, I can only give credit to the wonderful staff that go in there 24/7, 7 days a week, and provide fantastic care to my residents. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. That is absolutely outstanding. I think well worth noted, Mr. Chair, that this much higher level of scrutiny has resulted. I know that there's been some recent incidences around safety at St. Joseph's Healthcare, and I just want to ask through you, Mr. Chair, if safety is ever an issue for our frontline workers, and what policies that we have as a municipality in place for Wentworth Lodge, acknowledging it's a very different demographic, but I think still worth noting for the safety of our frontline workers.
Through you to the chair, safety is absolutely a huge priority for us in terms of our employees. And as our residents are getting older, we're seeing more cognitive behaviors, aggressive episodes for sure. We monitor these. Every time an incident occurs, we submit the information and follow up on them. So there's many factors that are contributing to this, so we're working on all of them. You know, obviously me asking for additional staff this past year, having more staff really helps in these situations. But in addition to that, we do a lot of training, because a lot of time if the staff know the right way to approach a resident and they know how to de-escalate the situation, in most cases we can avoid those kinds of episodes. We do have an overall domestic violence audit that we do every other year, and we assess all of those. We have call bells, as you've heard so much about, in every of the nursing rooms and tub rooms, et cetera, for assistance, and we have a special phone system at night as well. So we take it very seriously, and we have lots of processes in place. We're actually just participating in a study where experts are assessing the meds we are giving to residents with behavioral issues to see if they're the right meds. We have a low level of meds for residents with behavioral issues, because we don't want to over-medicate in any way, but we're having that assessed to make sure we've got the right med for the resident, which should mitigate those episodes as well, and also improve their quality of life. So big issue will always be. Unions are very involved with this. It's a standing item on our Health and Safety Committee.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say thank you very much. Mr. Chair, do you have further questions?
No, just to echo that, Mr. Chair, that I think topical with what happened recently. I think it's important for our community to know, and our union brothers and sisters to know, that in the municipality, something we certainly take serious, and just want to make sure that that was put on the public record today.
Thanks. I'll give you back the chair, and I see Councillor Whitehead indicating.
Councillor Whitehead, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I know this issue all too well. It is in my backyard, and it's been an ongoing issue well before the new mental health hospital was built. In respect to the concern of understaffing at St. Joe's, there's more on that later, but I just want to make sure on public record, I am concerned with my brothers and sisters that work at that particular hospital, and I will be marching with them whenever they wish to have me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So on item 5.4, may I please have a motion to receive the report? We will proudly have you move that, Councillor Jackson, and we will have it proudly seconded by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All those in favor? Carried. Excellent. Thank you very much to staff. At this point, we are now on to item 6, which I get a sense is probably for the majority of people what they're interested in terms of the delegations.
Mr. Chairman,
it
if
is-
I just may politely interject, do we want to deal with item 5.3 before moving on to the delegations?
Sure, I think that'd be appropriate, given that it's first in the list. Thank you for catching that, Madam Clerk. So we will go back to item 5.3, which was the deferred motion. We have Councillor Whitehead.
So at this point, it'd be great to have Calvin come down and provide his delegation, then we can dispense with 5.3.
Mr. Chairman, that motion was, 5.3 rather, was tabled. We just need a motion to remove it from the table to consider it.
So we have the motion removed by Whitehead, seconded by Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. So at this time, I'd like to call down Mr. Kane to present on behalf of his association.
Good afternoon. My name is Calvin Kane. I'm the president of the Ontario Home for Special Needs Association, and I'm here to speak on the wait list that has been enacted in Hamilton as of January 4th with respect to the DOM homes and housing with support. Don't have anything formal prepared right now, but I've been reading a lot and really reviewing the situation in the past 3 or 4 months when we were told that we were going to move in this direction. First of all, the situation with the clients. I'll just move straight ahead. We had a SHS report which came in 2 years ago. Hamilton decided to review the program, and we went through an extensive investigation of how the program is and what it does. It was presented to council, and we had some recommendation. Anyway, we went through the recommendation to the point where now we're at a waiting list that has been imposed on the program. What this wait list does, let me just back up for a second. The program itself is very flexible. Prior to the wait list, it's a very flexible program, meaning that you can actually have a client leave the hospital and be in one of these homes within 3 days. That means all the administration work, all the investigation, all the checking of the person, making sure that they're the right fit to find a home within 3 days. With this wait list that we're imposing right now, it's going to really log jam the system with respect to the clients having nowhere to go. We're talking about the city was estimating that there's 15 people leaving the system and 15 people coming into the system. However, the reality is that currently right now we got 32, I would say beds. I like to look at those beds as clients, not beds, but 32 clients that are in the system right now that has to leave before anyone can come in. So therefore, when the hospital call and says, well, we need someone to go in one of these homes because first of all, they can't afford anything greater. They need to get subsidized home. They need 24-hour care. They need someone to kind of manage their medication and so forth. Where do they go? Do they go to the shelter? The shelter is at capacity at this time, and they can't afford anything else. The next step would be the streets. That's another expensive venture for them to be on the street, and evidently when they go on the street, they will end up back in the hospital at another greater cost. So I'm looking at, for council to really look at this funding situation or this gap. I think the city came up with a $360,000 gap in the funding for 2016, somewhere around there. And I'm looking at council to see what we can do to bridge that gap and avoid this situation with the waiting list. I've recently received like maybe 6 phone calls this week of people going on the waiting list. And some of the operators are really concerned that where are these folks going to go. One of the biggest things that I have is somebody who, say for instance, for example, a person is 52 years old. They've been in a lodging home for 10 years. And they had an extended stay in the hospital for greater than 42 days, which is 42 days when you go in the hospital. That's a flex time that they give you to have per year. And they then come out of the hospital because they're there 52 days. They cannot find a home. The city may, they say, the documentation says they may hold that bed or hold that resident's home for them, providing that they go back to the same home. And it's a may, it's not a must. So that has two issues with it. One, the person, after living in a home for 10 years, comes out of the hospital, cannot go back in the home that they lived in for 10 years for whatever reason. And two, if we do hold that bed for them or that home for them, then nobody else can get in who really needs a bed as well. So it's really a situation where folks are going to be on the street, to put it frank. So I'm urging council to really look at this, drill down on the situation, why we're in this situation, what we are, and see how we can find that funding somewhere to satisfy the shortfall. That's my presentation. Thank you, council.
Thank you for staying within your allotted time. Are there any questions? At this time, I'd like a motion to receive the delegation, moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for your time. Councillor Whitehead.
Can I maybe ask Jillian through the chair to respond? Obviously, there's a couple of concerns, and I've sat in as a working group on a couple of these meetings, and the issue is obviously they're projecting a $321,000 variance, negative variance at the end of the year if they don't manage the process. So the rationale, as I understand it, behind creating the waiting list is, in fact, to manage that financial negative variance. There were concerns at the working group that there would be people that would fall through, not be able to get the appropriate housing and obviously shelter and be in a frail state and end up on the street. So can I get some clarification on those high-risk individuals, how they're being managed as a result of this creation of the waiting list?
Ms. Hendry?
I did actually check in with our residential care facility workers today who are actually taking the applications. And I can say that there are two types of wait lists for the residential care facilities for the domiciliary hostel subsidy. There is one called an active list, and those are people who currently do not have elsewhere to live and who are awaiting a subsidy. Now, there are 12 people on that list at this point in time, and 3 of them were actually accepted into residential care facilities, and they will be paying privately at approximately $700 a month, I believe, which leaves 6 people who are waiting for a bed, a subsidized bed in a residential care facility. Our staff are working closely with the hospitals, who are certainly one of the major referring sources, as well as the individual. And in that case, all those people, the 6 people who are on the wait list, are either still in the hospital awaiting a bed, or they are living privately. In other words, they're living with their families.
Councillor Whitehead?
I thank you, and help me understand, these are projections, but not necessarily something that's etched in stone in regards to what that negative variance is going to be. For example, it's my understanding that there has been some increases to, is it Ontario Disability in regards to, or is it OW, sorry, for beds, sorry, shelter or home, and that may offset some of the cost, and have we calculate that in, or we're yet to determine what that is?
Through the chair, we have estimated that at any given time, to remain within budget, we would have 740 residents living in a residential care facility and getting a subsidy. But you are absolutely correct that it depends upon the individual's income source as well. So, for example, it's a lesser subsidy that the city would provide if somebody is, for example, an ODSP client instead of an Ontario Works client, or somebody who has income source potentially through a pension. So what we are going to be doing, 740 is our average number, but we are going to be tracking this very closely. We anticipate that we will not be admitting or providing a subsidy for any new clients until the end of February, but each month we are going to be tracking this very closely. At this point in time, it looks like it will be until the end of February, but we will be keeping track, and it could very well be a few more or a few less.
Okay, and my last question, is, I think this was the concern, with the development of this process, what is the lag time that we anticipate as you know, if we compared last year to this year in regards to people getting into a home? What's our estimates? Are we looking at a 30-day or a 60-day turnaround? Do we have any estimates as a result of this implementation of this wait list?
Chair, this is very early day. I've heard anywhere up to 3 to 6 months, but again, I think that we have to take it on a month-to-month basis, and we'll have a better sense then.
Okay, those are the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to ask if I can pass the chair to Councillor Marula to ask some questions. Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, I got to say in reading this report, there are some things that I hope that the public can get a better understanding of, because I can remember back in April when we had the conversation around increased rates. So if you can just perhaps, through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Hendries, talk about the report CES 15007 with regards to per diem, because at that time I had supported that motion, and I just want to make sure that we were clear at that time, which I think we were, what effects that might potentially have.
Jillian?
Through the chair, this new process of providing subsidies to residential care residents through a central intake process and especially a waitlist process is being introduced with the goal of managing the number of people accessing the program and therefore keeping that program within budget. So at this point in time, the domiciliary hospital subsidy is budgeted at $6,702,880 a year, which is basically around a third of the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative funding. And what we have heard, certainly loud and clear through the operators, that the amount of the per diem, which at one point in time was legislated by the province, was not an adequate amount to provide the care that the city was expecting. So therefore, when the province gave us that opportunity to change the amount of the per diem ourselves, we first increased it to $48.25 from $47.75 per month in November 2013. And then finally, last year in April, it was changed again from $48.25 to $50 a month. So at that point in time, when the report came forward, we did caution council that there would be the potential to have to put in a wait list in order to remain within the budget that's been established. And then from there, the city was also given the ability to change the amount of monthly allowance that the residents who live in a domiciliary hospital or a residential care facility were able to keep. And as of June 1st, 2015, council approved increasing that amount from $138 a month to $150 a month. And they are able to keep that funding for their personal needs. And so, again, council was cautioned that because of that, there may be the need to increase the wait list. So really, the wait list was implemented to remain within budget in order that the operators could get an increase in their per diem of $50 per day, and the residents were able to keep $150 a month rather than $138 in the past.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can remember that. That was actually led by the leadership of Councillor Whitehead. And I can remember it almost being contentious. And I had some issues then. But we acquiesced. We listened to the passionate delegations of Mr. Kane, who's here with us today. And just for the point of clarity, because I think it's very important for the public to understand this, if you could just speak to the increased per diem rate and the monthly allowance for residents that were managed within the 2015 budget
the potential that we would have to implement a wait list in order to go with the $50 a month. I think that there was also the hope on behalf of the operators as well that the province would actually increase the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative budget in order to do that. But as you know, there are all sorts of other pressures with programs funded by that same budget as well.
So, Mr. Chair, at this time, I think the irony, and in fact, learning from you, Councillor Marula, the irony is that today we have a pre-budget consultation meeting happening across the street at Sheridan, which is, I think, a fantastic opportunity for those present when we're taking a look at these social services to understand where the budgets are in terms of how they're downloaded on municipalities and our ability to pay within these budgets. It's a very germane topic today to all the points that are being brought up, but in particular to this one. So I would encourage, through you, Mr. Chair, to any operators that are present today to engage in that process with the province to increase the total budgets flowed through so the municipalities can answer the call and reduce these wait lists. So at this time, I am done with my statements and questions, and we have Mr. Whitehead on the speaker's list.
Councillor Whitehead.
Just to note one thing that was left out, there was an independent consultant that the city hired that came in and took a look at the cost of the domiciliary hostel program and what the per diem rate is. And if I recall, and certainly Jillian can correct me, I think they had indicated that it was underfunded per diem and it should be around closer to $55 per diem versus the current $50. I also want to highlight that when we went to Queen's Park, you myself and others, we raised a number of these issues with the appropriate ministers. I can tell you that there's a mismatch of programming where people are on waiting lists. We have group homes that have between $200 and $500 per diem. We have residential care facilities, in some cases, have some of the same exact clients. They're getting $50 per diem. So when you take a look at the number of envelopes, the number of programs, the issue really is we need to completely revamp, whether it's Ministry of Health or Social Services, take a look at those envelopes, look at creating a matrix to ensure, because to me, ultimately, putting a roof over somebody's home head and making sure they have quality service and supports are key. The problem is you can't have such disconnection with the different values that are being associated to doing that. And sometimes through economies of scale, you can meet the greater needs of this community and the community that are at risk province-wide by revamping that system. And there is an acknowledgement that they need to do that because of the...
We acknowledge that in 2016, those pressures were going to be also there. And at any time, was that conversation had with operators that we would be shifting to this wait list? So we have a motion that moved by Councillor Whitehead, that's Community Emergency Services, write a submission on behalf of the domiciliary housing industry, and it was seconded by Councillor Marula to identify the shortfalls that have been placed on us by the province and to officially submit that on their behalf. All those in favor? Carried. I'd like to welcome Councillor Vanderbeek today joining us. Thank you. You can come on. Oh, you like the dark side. That's good. Okay, fair enough. So we have now on to item 5. The delegations. Thank you very much, Councillor Whitehead. And we have given some time to the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic if you would like to step forward and bring your presentation on behalf of Hugh Time. When coming down to the podium, we ask that all delegations stay within 5 minutes and sign in when they get a chance to do that. And just as a reminder that there's an opportunity for members of committee to ask questions that are pertinent to your presentation, but it's not a situation where you'll be necessarily firing questions at committee. So this is your opportunity to provide information from the public to committee to inform our decisions, and by no means is it a confrontational type format. If you could please state your name for the record and remember to speak into the microphone because we're being live streamed and the audio needs to be picked up. You can even adjust the mic if it helps.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Crow. I'm a lawyer with Hamilton Community Legal Clinic. I am also our clinic's lead on our mental health and addiction project. And I'm here to speak briefly in support of our clinics, in support of the maintenance of the trustee program. Our clinic has seen firsthand how the trustee program has a direct impact on a vulnerable client's ability to maintain housing and avoid homelessness. The trustee program offers much more in terms of eviction prevention than what either the Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program pay direct options could provide for clients. The trustee programs have staff who often work as both advocates and navigators for their clients. For example, attending landlord and tenant board hearings to help defend against eviction applications. And also to connect clients to important community services. Involvement in the trustee program also acts as a gateway to accessing other mental health and addiction services. And they act as a conduit to a multitude of other social services and help clients receive important wraparound services. And that's a summary of our position. Excellent. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions by the committee? I mean, technically, but so as long as we're respectful, I think we can stay within the realms of dignified public discourse. At this point in time, are there any questions from the committee? Given that we will have a series of delegations, what you've now done is gone on the public record on this file. I'm sure Hugh appreciates that. We have a motion to receive by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We now have Mr. Ed Zacharuski, if that's close, regarding the trustee program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, depending on how quickly I get through my presentation, I was asked earlier, and I think this was just an oversight, there's a bit of this delegation. We weren't able to connect, but I believe she's here in the room now. So if I have a few minutes at the end of my presentation, with the indulgence of the chair and the committee, perhaps she could, if there is time, if the committee would allow that.
May I please, are they here?
I believe so. Linda Edwards. Yes, okay. Thank
Linda,
you.
would you like to speak today to the delegation?
Yes.
As delegation?
Okay. So I'll try to be very quick so to allow Ms. Edwards an opportunity. Mr. Chairman, the members of the Emergency and Community Services Committee, thank you for this opportunity to address the issue of the future of the trusteeship program. My name is Edward Zacharuski, and I'm a registered social worker with over 30 years of frontline practice experience in the fields of mental health and addictions. During that time, I have worked with all three of the trusteeship programs and come to deeply appreciate the work they do in preventing homelessness, maintaining housing stability, and providing a quality of life to some of our most vulnerable citizens. Over the weekend, I studied the recommendations and the rationale for such from the city staff to this committee. I respectfully submit that recommendation is ill-considered and based on an inadequate understanding of both the circumstances and needs of our community. I expect that the province, to expect that the province would assume an additional expenditure at this time demonstrates a profound misunderstanding of the province's priorities as they currently exist. Mr. Chairman, I work in healthcare for one of the largest providers in the LHIN. Our hospital will be underfunded to the tune of $26 million for the next 2 years. Layoffs and program cuts have already occurred, and this is happening to Canada's most valued social program. It is at best unrealistic to expect the province to assume this responsibility given the province's current priorities, however wrong the current priorities are. We don't support their austerity budget. It may be the case that the province's aggressive austerity program will result in a balanced budget at some point in the near future. That prospect is at least a few years away. In the meantime, we do have a new federal government and new MPs that represent our community in that government. Mr. Bertina knows this city as few others do. On behalf of all Canadians, Mr. Trudeau himself has committed his support to serious homeless. The city must appeal to him and our MPs to redouble their support to our homeless. The committee needs to understand that the staff report, I think, is fundamentally flawed in many other respects. The absence of a broad community consultation unfortunately discredits whatever process the staff undertook and whatever conclusions it reached. It makes no reference to having spoken to a single recipient of the trusteeship service. This is a tremendous oversight. There have been no discussions with mental health care providers such as myself, and we make a significant number of referrals to the trusteeship program. Had the city staff reached out to the mental health and addiction providers, we would have told them why the programs need to continue. Severe mental illness and chronic addiction leave the most severely afflicted with significant cognitive impairments. Among other challenges, these clients have difficulty with planning, organizing, and setting priorities. The neuropsychologists at our hospital report that it is sometimes beyond the capabilities of a number of our clients that I work with to anticipate budgets and costs appropriately when trying to plan housing and other expenditures. Without the direction and support of their trustee, many individuals would misspend the small disability income that they do receive, and this will lead to they becoming homeless. The city staff also appear confident in the ability of other agencies and services to, quotation marks, pick up the slack when the trusteeship program winds down. This is a serious overestimation of what other agencies and services may be able to do. It is true that ODSP can pay rent directly to landlords if a client agrees to this. However, ODSP workers don't pay hydro bills, they don't do taxes, they don't apply for essential programs and new programs such as the Ontario Energy Support Program or the Trillium Drug Program. As the previous presenter indicated, they very much are service navigators and links to essential services in the community. Similarly, the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee has its own limitations. Not every client meets the criteria of that particular service. Admission to that program is based on a finding of incapacity. That finding can take place in a hospital and sometimes more rarely in the community. In hospital, finding someone incapable of managing their finances must be done by a psychiatrist willing to defend that finding. Not many psychiatrists want to do that. In the community, clients can refuse to participate in the capacity assessment required to make those clients part of the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. The end of the trusteeship program will have certain outcomes, and I know this because I've seen this happen. Clients will lose their housing. There will be more panhandling, theft, break and enter. The police will be called to more incidents. The shelter system will turn people away as there will be no way to accommodate the demand. How can I be so sure that this will happen? Because I know what the city staff choose to, unfortunately, downplay. Downtown Hamilton is awash in crack and crystal meth. Substances so powerfully addicted, users will do just about anything to get more. The efforts to revive and rehabilitate our downtown will be undermined by this game of football, and I can only call it something that is with respect to who's going to be responsible for what, that people appear to be willing to entertain to play. The citizens of Hamilton do not want to turn the funding of the trusteeship programs into that kind of political game of football. Mr. Chairman, thousands. We have launched an online petition and a paper petition. In about 10 days, we have, at last count, 2,552 respondents. I think we try to get some of the online petition comments to the members of the council. I am so deeply moved by this community's support of the trusteeship program. I urge you to turn to some of the online petition comments and have a look at those, please.
Mr. Zekarowski, we have 5 minutes because there are other people who would like to speak.
Certainly. And
You
I'll try-
identified one, and I think rather than have her come down and take your time, we'll just extend her a full 5 minutes to be able to work through whatever presentations she would like.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. It's very kind of you. Thank you very much.
Point, would you like to entertain questions from the committee?
I don't want, I think the committee gets my drift. So I'm certainly happy to entertain questions if.
I'm sorry to say that again?
I think the committee understands the points that I'm trying to make.
Okay.
I wasn't quite done, but
If you'd like, I'm happy to make it.
I just have one more paragraph. Thank you very much.
Chairman, welcome.
We're going to let him, we're going to let him finish. He's got a paragraph left. Very passionate.
Mr. Chairman, my last paragraph. Mr. Chairman, there is something wrong with a homelessness strategy that does not support an effective initiative such as the Trusteeship Program. That needs to be fixed. Until that can be done, support from the program needs to continue, and this city needs to step up. I know the citizens of this city are willing to step up and support that program, and I ask and I urge you to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we do have a question. We have Councillor Marula, followed by Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Just on the notion or topic of regressive versus progressive taxation,
Certainly.
how do you reconcile to you, Mr. Chairman, that you fund additionally from a municipal regressive nature of taxation for social services, which compounds the already unsustainable formula that we have presently that impacts the most vulnerable, the same people you're talking about were impacted by increasing the demand of that financial burden at the municipal level rather than the progressive level of the provincial and federal government.
You know, I think, Councilor Miller, you and I are of like minds. I mean, I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. But and if I wasn't clear enough, I apologize. I think what I'm urging council to do is at least in the interim, continue to fund the program until those very thorny questions of who pays for what and who assumes responsibility for what can be sorted out. I mean, that to leave vulnerable individuals behind while that political wrangling takes place, I think would be the wrong thing to do.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if you've been following, I've now been in public service for 30 years almost,
Yes.
elected for 16, and working for with those very vulnerable people that you're referring to.
And we recognize that, Councillor.
Addictions, people with disabilities, homeless, that was my tenure. And I can assure you, through you, Mr. Chairman, that by continuing to not address that formula, it's something that we've been fighting for a long, long time. No one is listening, but to continue that problem only makes those most marginalized even more marginalized.
Sure.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the other levels of government, and we need to be as aggressive as possible to ensure that we find a solution and not compound and have other levels of government walk away scot-free and impact those most marginalized in our community.
And if I may, Councilor Marula, I was actually outside the Sheridan, moments ago this committee met, trying to speak with the MPPs and trying to address this issue. I think, and I certainly know that my social work colleagues are very active in trying to redress the injustice, not only of a social system, but a taxation system as well. Those things, and who better to address these problems than to Mr. Bertina and Ms. Tassi, our new representatives, who will perhaps hear those issues with open ears, unlike the previous government. I would be part, and I know my colleagues would be part of any representation, any delegation, any effort that we could possibly make. We are, sir, you and I are of like minds on this issue. But in the meantime, we cannot leave the most vulnerable of our citizens behind.
That's what we've been saying to you, Mr. Chairman, for nearly 20 years, since 1995.
Yeah.
And the problem is the more we absorb, the more it compounds itself, and the more sustainable we become, where we're going to hand our future, the future generation. We cannot afford it. But on that front, I'm going to move on a little further to be our staff. So through you, Mr. No, on the point that was made, I need a response from his concern. So surrounding the flawed report?
There are a number of concerns I also have, and I think maybe if we just, if you'll entertain me.
I'd like to have Jillian respond to the flawed report.
Okay, yeah, certainly. Let's, so there were statements Ms. Hendry made about the flawed nature of the report and in regards, I think, to perhaps consultation with the community, as well as whatever impacts that might be presented.
So Jillian, could you just elaborate on the process in which we got to this point and your view on the allegation that the report is flawed?
Chair, this process actually began last year in that we did a call for applications for funding for the federal homelessness funding and the provincial community homelessness prevention initiative funding. And there was a certain amount of funding that was set aside for homelessness prevention programs. And just to note that the federal government changed the focus of their funding, and that from there on in, 65% of that funding was to go to Housing First programs, which in turn reduced the amount of funding that we had available for homelessness prevention programs. And the trusteeship program is considered to be part of homelessness prevention. So when the call for applications was taken, the trusteeship program did not rate highly, and as a result, other programs, other very good programs, received the funding, and the trusteeship program, it was necessary to end that funding. But we did bring a report to council, not only for the trusteeship program, but for the 5 other programs that ended as well. And council approved transition funding for basically up to 1 year. Some of the programs, it was 3 months, some were 6, but in the case of the trusteeship program, we knew it would take at least a year for the 3 programs that receive, the 3 agencies that receive the funding, and there are 3, with the Good Shepherd as being the lead. There's Good Shepherd, Salvation Army, and Mission Services. So our staff, Amanda DeFalco, who's sitting behind me here, as well as Lauren Pierce, have been working closely with the 3 agencies to, number 1, try and secure alternate funding elsewhere, which, not surprisingly, was not successful, and also to work with them to find alternate resources, other places that all of the clients could go to get this type of support. And a plan is in place to do that. And I will share some statistical information around that in a minute. And also, staff did a scan of the various trusteeship programs that are out there, both in Canada and the U.S. as well, because what we need to do, given the limitation of the funding that we have, is focus on programs that have positive outcomes, very strong outcomes. And unfortunately, the trusteeship program was able to provide us with very little data, which is part of the reason that they weren't successful in getting the funding to begin with. Okay. And so, what was recommended, and actually the agencies that are providing the trusteeship program, they did agree with us at the time that having a more targeted financial management program would be the best way to go. And attached to this report as well is a model of the type of program that we would recommend. That program would serve 100 to 150 clients rather than the current 541 that I believe are currently being served. And it would cost around $150,000 rather than the $385,000 per year. And the purpose of it would be a more progressive program in that trusteeship services would be provided on an individualized basis. And also on top of that, it would be the goal to eventually end dependence on trusteeship for that person.
Okay, so
there are always
Go ahead.
There are always going to be, there are individuals who require intense trusteeship services, and they would be referred on to the Ontario Public and Guardian Trustee. And then there are people who could probably be able to function independently, but it's those people in the middle that we feel would have the best outcomes and would certainly benefit from that type of service. Okay. The other thing that we have done on top of that with the trustee programs, that they have been working very closely with ODSP staff, as well as the few clients that receive OW, to assist them in getting direct payment of rent. They also, many of the individuals that get trusteeship receive case management and supports from other services as well. And I certainly understand from your speaker that they are also limited as far as the amount of services that they are able to provide, but we do feel strongly that there are agencies out there that can provide services such as Catholic Family Services and potentially even our own city's home management services.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the allegation that people are falling through the cracks, can you just elaborate on the fact that there is a plan in place to ensure that those people do not fall through the cracks?
Mr. Chairman, if I just might interject really quickly, we're at the delegation section of the agenda, and although I respect that there's questions related to the report, we're not at the report itself
It's
yet.
about the presentation.
So what we'll do is, because a statement was made, and I believe it was a fairly strong statement around staff and their abilities, I think it is due fair to allow them to go down this line of questioning, to just refute some of the statements that were made, particular to this presentation, and then at the appropriate time, we'll entertain the staff report and ask any other questions that might be needed.
Two allegations: the flawed report and the fact that these individuals are going to fall through the cracks and start smoking crack. That's what I think I heard.
Through the chair, there are currently 541 clients, I believe, that are served through the trusteeship program. And about there was a risk assessment done of the various people who are getting trusteeship services, and 300 were scored as low risk. And I think that people also saw it in the paper the other day that it was reported that 200 of those individuals are at risk, at high or medium risk of homelessness. So our staff did in fact ask for the names of each of the individuals. And there were 212 people that were reported as being at high risk of homelessness. 163 of those people are in receipt of ODSP, and 4 are in receipt of Ontario Works Assistance. So Housing Services staff have been working with ODSP and OW to ensure that all people currently in receipt of trusteeship services are meeting with their case managers to provide them with support and offer the payment of rent directly to landlords. There are 45 people who have other sources of income, such as old age pension. And of the 45 individuals, 18 are residing in residential care facilities or long-term care facilities. So of the 27 remaining people, 20 are connected to other community supports, which would leave 7 individuals who are not connected to any other community supports and services beyond the trusteeship program. And so we will certainly work with the trusteeship program to follow up on those cases to see if there are any other options for assistance.
I thank you for that thorough response on both of those issues. And
Rio?
Just to
on the question as it relates to the presentation.
Of the flawed part of it. Given that this is taxpayers' dollars, we definitely followed our due diligence in terms of the request for proposal process that we have in place. And when Jillian says that we have certain criteria that we have to adhere to during the RFP process in terms of why that particular application fell short, what Jillian is saying, it's not about the program. It was in terms of the process that we went through and how we allocate our money, which is not flawed. We follow the policy and the direction of council. And we have tried our best in terms of meeting with people. We're the last people sitting at this table that wants to see people harmed. Given the direction and given the way we get money from the federal government where this was funded, we did do due diligence, follow the process, and we've got a transition plan in place trying to do the best we can in terms of the funding shortfall, which is not our fault, sort of.
I feel comfortable in endorsing the staff report, which has been presented, and I strongly support. Thank you.
We have Councillor Whitehead, followed by myself, if there's no other.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you presented a very compassionate, well-focused discussion about the array of services that may not necessarily be captured with respect to what we've already heard that through the trustee program. I guess the first question I have is, and I'm with my other colleagues, I am tired of being the last buck stops at the council. The federal and provincial government will just download programs, and then the nonprofit organizations will march on the doors and say, Council, you're the point of last resort, so go and tax your taxpayers and have them put more money into these programs because they're great programs. I don't think any of us will dispute that there aren't great programs out there that need funding. I guess what we're tired of is allowing ourselves to be the scapegoat for the provincial and federal governments for not fulfilling their responsibilities. And I think over time we're worn down. I think we had a committee report in regard, and we met at Queen's Park to talk about the downloading issues and how much significant costs have been downloaded to whether it's housing or otherwise onto the backs of property taxpayers, which is not the place that you should be downloading those kinds of funds. In fact, more disproportionately in Hamilton than any other community. So we're already under great pressure. So when you come here before us today, and in good faith and very passionate about great programs and some of the many array of things that the program embodies, the challenge for me is, yes, and I'm going to have 10 others behind you doing the same thing, and yet the federal and provincial governments are the ones that abandon the criteria or the funding for these particular programs. So I guess my question to you is, have you met with Ted McMeekin directly and provided the emboldened and passionate speech you've delivered here today in regards to what their responsibilities are?
Mr. Whitehead, I have spoken with Mr. McMeekin on a number of occasions about a number of issues. With respect to the downloading argument, what I think Council needs to realize, should the trusteeship program end, the service will be downloaded to our police officers to deal with. So the city will not escape its responsibility in dealing with the homeless issue by merely, punting the football to the provincial government. It will end up in the hands of the police that will have to deal with the theft, the petty crime, the break and enters, and Mr. Marilla, you shake your head. Mr. Marilla, with respect, and if I may respond.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You're right now, the floor is.
I understand.
Actually, at this point,
yeah.
I'd like to caution everybody that in this conversation, we're going to be engaging in a dignified, responsible, adult conversation.
Yes.
There's no cross shots. He communicates through the chair. Okay. You communicate through the chair. I am the chair. Councillor Whitehead has a question. Please address him.
And I certainly will, and I apologize. Mr. Whitehead, I think that's I appreciate the downloading challenge. There are other consequences to the end of the program. I think that's what and if I've not been clear enough in expressing those consequences to the end of the trusteeship program, the consequences, I can guarantee you, will be more shelter demand, more pressure on the city's addiction services to deal with that, certainly many more police calls. I visit the lodging homes every day. I see that even with the small amount of the personal needs allowance, when that gets misspent on substance, what kind of havoc that creates. We can only imagine the havoc that would be created should an ODSP check, and they sometimes are spent on substance, and what the consequences of that. So I think we have to understand what the downloading means in a broader sense.
Whitehead?
And I hope it's somewhat clear.
I understand, but
Yes.
I mean, that's like chasing my tail, because every organization will make exact same argument you just made here before
Yeah.
us. You don't pay this bill and you continue providing the funding for this program, I can guarantee that crime is going to go up. I can guarantee that more people will be on crack.
Yeah.
I can guarantee, and you get tired of, in fact, you get callous to that argument, because that's the desperation of individuals that are so embodied and impassioned to the program that they so rightfully provide.
Mr. White,
It makes it difficult for me to buy that alone.
is there a follow-up question, Mr.
So,
Whitehead?
well,
I just don't want to get into a cross debate.
Yeah.
These are delegations, we can receive them. Mr. Whitehead, if we could, just so that we don't lose control of the conversation, we can receive the delegations, we can ask staff questions. At the end of this, we can debate the recommendation, but let's not debate the people, let's just debate the process, if you will.
And in fact, I wasn't debating, I think I was expressing that there are many other organizations that have been either underfunded or not funded at all, or fallen off, and they'll be coming up and making the same argument. So I wasn't debating you, because it'll be the same argument.
Sure.
I just want to make you aware that that's the challenge we have as council.
I don't think that was a follow-up question. So at this time, are there any other questions? If not, I'd like to pass the chair to Councillor Marula. Councillor Johnson is back. He is the vice chair. Councillor Johnson, I'd like to pass the chair to you.
Please go ahead, Councillor Green.
Ed, I got to tell you, in your presentation, I've taken exception to a few things that you've said, and I do have a question.
Certainly.
Do you implicitly equate extreme low poverty to criminality?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
Do you equate low income to criminality?
No, not at all, sir. And if there was any indication, I apologize for that. But the criminality takes place clearly with the substance and how people obtain substance, and there is certainly an issue in this city, and one that me and my colleagues see every day with respect to that. And the trusteeship program is profoundly helpful in at least mitigating, at least keeping some of that money out of people's hands so they don't use and they don't relapse. And I think Mr. Green, one of actually the mother of one of my clients, wrote you directly and spoke to you very, I think, clearly and eloquently how much the trusteeship program helped her obtain housing and retain that housing and stay away from the substance that has plagued his life.
So I can fully anticipate, and I will acknowledge through you, Mr. Chair, the coordinated effort that's been put forward on this particular file as it relates to monies that go to agencies. Yeah. My question to you is, have you and your agency registered for the pre-budgetation? I know that you showed up, but did you put the same kind of effort and coordination and lobbying to the provincial government that is happening right here across the street as you did to City Hall?
There's some unfairness in that question, Mr. Green. Certainly, I've been very active throughout my practice in advocating for my clients at whatever level is needed to be able to work in their best interest.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, is there a motion? If there's no other questions, I'll take the chair back.
Great.
We have a motion to receive. I do appreciate you, sir, coming before committee. I get the passion, and I understand certainly that.
We can talk about the 200 that may or may not become homeless. It could be 500. It could be 300. It's a debate, and everybody's got their own opinion. However, to provide service that we have been providing, the cost is $46.56 a month. That money keeps an individual housed and provides whatever other service we can hook them up with or do for them. A shelter bed costs $1,620 a month. I'd like for the committee to sort of look at this as an investment, a strategic investment, versus a cost to the municipality. The municipality, through the responsibilities of the CMSM, is responsible for homelessness on return. This is corroborated by the Canadian Homelessness Hub research network, of which Stephen Gates is a member. The other point that I'd like to make is that the emergency shelters in 2015 had a capacity of 95%. So my sense is that there's very little capacity to deal with any additional homeless. And Mr. Chairman, to quote you, I think it was last year, you mentioned in the paper about the perfect storm. The perfect storm of events such as gentrification, higher housing prices, low vacancy, will continue to put pressure on the system. So any little more pressure will have an effect. The program is called actually prevention, but it is actually diversion and prevention. When an individual comes to us, they're in a period of crisis. They're either homeless or they're in a situation where they're going to be losing their housing. So what we've been doing, the 3 programs, we stabilize the person, and then as time goes by, we prevent them from becoming homeless. The 3 agencies also handle approximately $1.5 million a month from all of this, from all of the monies that comes to the various clients. And one of the other things that I'd like to mention is the simple fact that individuals who are on Ontario Works, which we have very few of them, most of them are on ODSP, but we've got over 200 individuals who are seniors in receipt of CPP, OAS gains. And those particular income sources don't pay direct to the landlord. So it creates a bit of a wrinkle for us. There was mention that there's a budget meeting going on. Our own Alan Whittle, who works for the Good Shepherd, is attending that budget session, and he's making a presentation on behalf of the Good Shepherd. So we try to take every opportunity that we can. I think I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you very much. And can you, for the audience, pronounce your name properly so that for those that are watching, they're not left with my rendition, sir?
I thought you did okay.
Yeah?
Salsacholi.
Salsacholi. Okay. At this time, I'd like to pass the chair to the Vice Chair, Councillor Aidan Johnson. So I did get a chance to look at the registered speakers list across the table. Why that was important to me is because I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity as a municipality, as councillors, as members of this committee, as well as City Housing Hamilton, to also submit our own comments. And I did notice that Mr. Whittle is on that. Today, sir, you are here representing 2 other agencies, Mission Services and Salvation Army. I'll ask you the same question I asked the other delegate. Are they also registered at the pre-budget consultation meeting?
I'm not sure of that. I see Patty Bowen, no, from Mission Services. Okay. I don't know if the Salvation Army person is still here.
The reason why I asked that question, and I think it's worth stating, is that when we had the opportunity to go in front of Queen's Park, I can tell you that at the current time, the chair, Mr. Whitehead, and I both brought all of these issues around the social pressures that we were facing last year and that we anticipated we would face this year. And so my question to you is, today, I have personally as a councillor, not officially as the chair of this committee, but acting in that capacity, have drafted a letter that we'll be presenting forward to the province, outlining all the housing pressures and all the social service pressures, as well as social assistance, as well as affordability and gentrification. So the quote that you mentioned is very appropriate that today there'll be a press release stating that. My question to you and the agencies that you're here representing, and you don't have to answer it right now, but I will invite you, sir, through the chair, to join on to that joint letter agreeing to the points in principle once you get a chance to read that with the other agencies. Because what I feel is missing, Mr. Sasacholi, and maybe you can speak to this, I've seen a very coordinated effort on this and a few other individual one-off, one-time funding requests. If you can just talk about the sustainability of one-off, one-time funding requests and what that does in terms of overall budgeting for your agencies that you're here representing.
Please go ahead.
I'm not sure that I can, to be quite honest. Our particular agency, if you're referring to the Good Shepherd, is a fairly large agency, and specifically that's not one of my roles. But I know, having worked with the bureaucracy, having been with the staff, I know that you try to get a master plan, and then you try to maneuver through that plan instead of just doing one-off things, so that things are coordinated and you have a particular objective at the end.
So, Mr. Sasacholi, based on previous delegations from Good Shepherd, you're here with Good Shepherd is your role. Are you aware of any other programs that got funded through the same shift in CHIPE funding and federal funding? Is Good Shepherd currently being funded in any other programs based on the shift?
I'm not aware. We probably are being funded through some other programs. I believe there are some in women's services, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if there's any in youth services, but if you're looking for a name, I couldn't give it to you.
So that's okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that, just out of curiosity, how long have you been in this field for, sir?
About 43 years.
And during your time as a professional in the social service sector, is it common for upper levels of government to shift funding, and is it also common for agencies to adjust accordingly, both losing programs and creating new programs that fit the new mandate?
It is. It is. However, Hamilton has always prided itself in Hamilton-made solutions, and this could be a Hamilton-made solution. The staff have already mentioned that they would be in favor of a smaller program. Well, the three agencies would be in favor of a smaller program as well. I think what we would need to work out is it 200, is it 150, is it 300, and provide that necessary service to those individuals that need it the most.
Okay, at the appropriate time, I'll have staff comment on what they're willing and not willing to do and what they're recommending and not willing to recommend, Mr. Chair. But I do appreciate your candor through you, Mr. Chair, and in the facts that you've presented. I don't think any of us are disputing those facts. And I would also like to extend the invitation to those members that are able to, that have the authority to, present today. If they had a chance to read the letter that I already have drafted, that will be part of my official submission, in partnership, I believe, with Councillor Collins and City Housing Hamilton. I would love to open that opportunity so that we can actually approach the province with a coordinated effort rather than continue to do the one-off, back to the table, one-time funding on top of one-time funding on top of one-time funding. So those are my questions and comments for now, Mr. Chair. Are there any other speakers?
Councillor Green, Councillor Marula has indicated.
Councillor Marula?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Carmen.
Thank you.
And I go back a couple of decades, so I appreciate always seeing you and hearing your views. Husbands, your understanding of it. There's been $3.7 million allocated for 5 years from the feds. Now, when the city tendered out, we tendered out 8.9 million in applications. So the trustee program itself really has never met the full demand. And now we're moving forward to try to reconcile a number of those concerns. So, through you, Mr. Chairman, can you elaborate on how the system that you're advocating for presently is going to be any better than what we actually came up with through our staff?
Let me make sure that I understand the question correctly. When, through the chair, when you say that hasn't met the full demand because there always seems to be more people requiring the service or not getting the correct amount of money.
$2.7 million a year for 5 years from the feds. When the city tendered it out, we had 8.9 million in applications. So the demand has never been met under the trustee program.
You're right. You're right. I have to tell you also that the agencies themselves, the three agencies, also put in money of our own. Because when we did apply to the city, we didn't get the full amount of money that we applied for. So we've been picking up some of that money that we didn't get through our own fundraising and whatever else.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, the city did as well, because we put in $750,000 of general levy money, just so that there isn't a misconception that the trustee program was meeting the needs, because that in itself is inaccurate. There was always a deficit and a shortfall. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate your presentation. At this time, are there any more questions? We have Councillor Whitehead.
Just one, and it was raised earlier, and again, just subsequently now. I don't know what analysis was done, but there's 2,000 signed the petition. I think former delegation, and I think you're suggesting you already do some fundraising. We heard in past presentations that fundraising is getting more difficult. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Do you not believe that that's a sign of the pressures that this community and the residents in this community have?
I believe it's pressure that every community has. It's they refer to it as donor fatigue.
I appreciate that, but I think that what I'm hearing is that people are being, whether they're being taxed out or donated out. The reality is that the capacity is shrinking in regards to their ability to give, and so if you can't get it one way voluntarily, then the only other way is to do it through the levy. And that's the challenge we have as a council, is that we're forcing something on that they're not prepared to pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, and then I have myself on the second-time speakers list, so there are no other first-time speakers. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Carmen, always appreciate seeing you here at the podium, and a lot of respect for your years of service in social services, mostly formerly with the region, and your work, of course, with the not-for-profit agency, Good Shepherd. So, Carmen, you know both sides of the dilemma that we're in. You've been there. You've worn different hats. You've never been elected, but you've always been respectful of the elected level. Is your ideal desire that this program continues for an indefinite period until such time that all levels of government with community partners somehow find a permanent solution, with senior levels of government being increased players at the table? Mr. Chairman, through you to Carmen, please.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I was naive, I'd say yes. But not being naive, or being realistic, if there was some bit of a transition period, and in the sense that we want to make sure that all of these folks that are on, we hook them up as best as we can. Family benefits is going to come in. We've had discussions with them, at least I have, and we're going to be meeting with them probably by the end of the week or so to go through the listing and see how many direct deposits we can do, etc. I'm looking, to be quite honest, I sat in my office before I came and I thought, if there was a possibility of getting a program for 300 clients, very, very high acuity, that program would cost about $165,000, $170,000. And I think that would be a good bang for the dollar for the city.
So currently through your, thank you, Carm. Currently through your fact sheet, you've mentioned the three agencies providing up to about 690 clients. You're suggesting slightly less than half that, Mr. Chairman, through you to Carm?
I believe so. I believe so. Currently, there are 647 clients within the three programs. As this was done, this was a snapshot that was taken in April.
So then, Mr. Chairman, through you to Carmen, as we're just exploring every possible hypothetical scenario. So in a reduced type of program with the most highly special needs that are out there, the most hardship needs, your ideal scenario would be to reduce the number of clients served but continue annual municipal funding whether federal provincial partners were at the table. Mr. Chairman, through to Carmen, have I interpreted that correctly, or did I misunderstand?
You've interpreted it correctly. However, if there was any other source of funding and we could relieve the tax levy, that would be ideal, of course.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carmen. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd like to pass the chair back over to Councillor Johnson, put myself on the second-time speakers list.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Carmen, I got to tell you, I really appreciate, again, the passion and the coordination that's come through the coordinated effort. And you've spoken about your 40 years experience in social service. And so just this last line of questioning, it does make me have to bring this forward. And I do apologize in advance if it's a pointed question. And I also acknowledge if you can't answer it. But in your experience with Good Shepherd, what is the size and scope of Good Shepherd in terms of its total budget?
The total budget, I'm guessing, is around $14 million.
So having had very preliminary, much smaller experience in nonprofits, what would Good Shepherd's reserves be in terms of capital reserves or donation reserves?
I couldn't tell you that.
Is it fair to say, and I'll put it out there to the other agencies that are there for their own consideration, is it fair to say, though, that agencies in the tens of millions of dollars in their governance and in their planning put money away for capital reserves? Or just reserves in general?
I would assume so, yes.
So given the passion that we're hearing around the table and the request to come back to the city, to go back to the general levy to fund this $150,000 scaled down program, is it not possible through you, Mr. Chair, to Carmen, that the three agencies, all fairly big in size and scope, most likely, I think it's fair to assume respectfully, that they do have reserves, go to the reserves first and allow the city to work with its partners at the different levels of government to come for a more sustainable funding model?
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that for the other two agencies, but I can tell you, and you will recall that Brother Richard stood here on December the 8th, making committee aware of a deficit, I believe was $230,000 deficit in youth services. So are we in a position to pick up this particular program? The answer is no.
And it can be noted that in operating budgets from year to year, you run a deficit, but it doesn't necessarily take into account monies that are in reserves. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is, when you have an organization that's funded to the tune of $14 million, and we're here today with two other large organizations acknowledging the passion and the need that has been so passionately identified by people in terms of if these agencies not being able to go forward with this program, then surely between the three, in your own reserves, you could come forward with at least meeting us halfway or at least showing the ability to dip into your own reserves before asking us to come to the general levy. And I do apologize, and I will say with regards to Brother Richards when he was here in December, my only regret is that I didn't ask him that question then. So at this time, I'll take the chair back, and if there are any further questions, if not, we will move to, would you like to?
Yes.
Sir, certainly.
I just want to reiterate what I said earlier, that we have been putting some of our own money into running the programs. If you recall, we applied, the city put their request for applications out, and I think it was in the around $900,000 plus, and we got 766, 67. So we've been putting in the difference all along.
I can appreciate that, but again, we're talking globally with regards to budgets and reserves, and just making sure that the general public understands that when things like this, or the Notre Dame House, or any of the other conversations come forward, that we also talk about the reserves that are held by the social service agencies. It's an important conversation. Mr. Whitehead.
Just for clarity, that differential that you're talking about, is that real cash, or is that valued service, assessed or evaluated service in kind at that $200,000?
No, it's real cash through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Certainly appreciate the presentation, Carmen. Again, the invitation is open should those be interested to review the letter that I'll be sending out personally as a councillor and as a member of this board. I'll just make this little statement, and I appreciate your indulgence. I'm going about this all wrong, but I just want to have this conversation. I think that we're a lot better off when we coordinate our efforts And when we all push for long-term sustainable social service funding, rather than allowing the province to continue to get off the hook with what they're doing right now. And I would have much rather have deferred this meeting and had all of us go across the street to really demonstrate the reality of what it is that we're dealing with here. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Sacciatoli, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. At this time, we have moved to receive. Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All those in favor? Carried. Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, I do apologize. I can't recall the name of the woman.
I believe it's Linda Edwards.
Miss Edwards, would you like to come down still? It's completely up to you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we have reserved time for you to speak. If you'd like to go on the record, this is your opportunity. Thank you for your courage.
Well, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Well, not even. We're at the top, the cream of the crop.
Well, the trusteeship has saved my hiney many a time. I am at the point I don't know what I would do without them. I suffer from depression. I could name a few more. Being in front of people really, being with crowds drives me crazy. I wait until everything is dwindled down to nobody before I go in. They work with me in everything that I need. We moved just a little while ago and we had bed bugs. We trashed everything. And they helped us to find places where to find beds, where to find, different things. And without them, we'd still be sleeping on blankets, I think. But I don't know, different things. They saved me when I got robbed. I was robbed and they helped me. And just a few months after that, my landlord claimed I owed them back rent. They saved me. They were there to fight for me. I can't do these things alone. I would buckle under pressure and hide under a desk. But they were there to help me, and just different things for the community. The food bank, I don't know what I'd do without that. Don't use it always, but when I do, need it. So I don't know anything about money, anything about what all this costs. My rent is straight from ODSP, and that helps because I don't have to think about that. And then they get the rest of my money, and at first I was pissed. I was pissed that I had to hand it over to somebody else to handle for me. But within the 3 months, I was grateful, and I was been more and more grateful for things ever since, just little things that help. And my daughter is here holding me up, so pretty much, there's so many of us that need these things that the programs that they provide. And like we all have different issues, different problems. And that's pretty much where we are.
Would your daughter like to say anything at all, or are you just there for support?
She's just there here holding me up.
Well, what an incredible daughter, and thank you so much, Linda, for your courage. Please, if we could.
Thank you.
Tremendous courage. To receive? Yes, we have Councillor Whitehead is going to move to receive, seconded by Councillor Marula. Thank you again, Linda, for your courage. Thank you so much. Okay.
Just a vote on that.
Oh, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for keeping me on track. Madam Clerk, well, kind of de facto chairing right now, but I appreciate her. So at this time, Madam Clerk, are there any more delegations?
We have one last delegation, Mr. Chairman. It's Adrian Newport.
Oh, my apologies, Adrian. Please come on down. You were on the registered speakers list, and I had Linda go first. I hope you don't mind.
Sorry if I cried. I'm very emotional.
That's okay.
I just want to say that this trusteeship means the world to me. I don't know where I would be without them. I suffer from bipolar, depression, anxiety, a lot more than you know. Last night I was admitted into the psychiatric hospital due to this cutbacks. I'm trying to work hard to say, people, please. I need them. I don't want to be homeless. I have such a beautiful apartment. I lived with bed bugs and cockroaches for over a year now. I've been finally bug-free. I just would give anything to save this beautiful and precious trusteeship program. So I beg you to please keep them open for as long as you could possibly can. So I wrote something. I've been extremely frustrated due to the fact the government is cutting the funding to all the non-profit trustee programs. These trusteeship programs are very much needed. And I truly believe cutting these programs will make matters worse. More homeless people, more thefts, everything. It would just make matters worse. And I could become homeless along with thousands of other people homeless as well. I also believe that instead of cutting these valuable trustees programs, we need to create and build more services, more programs, instead of cutting them. Such as we need to create more food banks, more homeless shelters, more trusteeship programs to help others who need help with their financial affairs. Please, I urge you, do not cut these programs. We need them. We rely on them, or else we'd be nothing without them. Please reconsider your decision. I beg you. That's everything.
Thank you so much for your courage, Adrian. Thank you. Yes. Oh, if you could, though, if you could just wait, just in case there's some comments or questions. We have Councillor Marula.
Mr. Chairman, and many thanks for your presentation. If you could just make sure you leave all of your detailed information with our staff, because they will follow up accordingly. You're not going to be homeless. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, did you want to?
I was going to make the exact. Our staff are incredible, and they've already identified there were 7 that were at risk in that previous discussion and answers in response to Councillor Marula. If anyone feels at risk, this is the time to make sure that our staff are aware of the concern, so that we can make sure that they're tapped into the appropriate services and supports. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So at this time, may I please have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, are those all of our registered delegations?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So may I please move to item 7.1, which is the Seniors Advisory Committee to provide a presentation respecting the booklet entitled Housing Options for Older Adults in Hamilton.
Good afternoon. I was here for morning because I'm kind of confused about the day of time, and I want to say I'm Caroline Fernandez and a member of the Hamilton Seniors Advisory, chair of the Housing Subcommittee, and on this subcommittee are Mary Sinclair, Deirdre Chartan, John Winslow, Bob Thompson, and John Hawker. As we all know, and we've heard today, housing is a quality of life issue for each one of us, no matter what age. And we are entitled to housing.
If we could just quickly, can we lock that? I know we don't like to do that, but otherwise it's just going to open and close.
We are entitled to housing.
I'm sorry, if I could ask for just a 2-minute break. What we're going to do is allow the doors to close. We're going to lock them. Otherwise, they're just going to open and close and distract you. I think it's right there, Madam Clerk, on that screen. You can lock it up. Oh, okay, got it. So now. New system, ADOA, finally, we got it set up. But one of the things is it does open and close. So the floor is now yours. Thank you.
Housing is a quality of life issue no matter what age. And we're all, each one of us, entitled to housing that is safe, secure, accessible. But as one ages, housing needs change, and we see the value and benefits of housing that is at close proximity to places of worship because we pray a lot, groceries because we need to eat, medical facilities because a lot of seniors need that.
Opportunities for social action, interaction, because if we don't, you'll have bigger issues at your hand. The Canadian population is aging. It is the fastest growing aging population.
Stopping. In 25 years from now, 1 in 5 are going to be seniors, and that would be you too. It's imperative to give more thought to the special needs associated with seniors. As a committee, we set up some objectives in our 4 or 5-year term. We've been working at these objectives diligently, and today we're going to focus on the last.
Increase awareness by providing information
about housing needs for an aging population. What we did was develop a booklet after we saw that cities like Sudbury, Toronto, and Halton had a booklet, so we thought it was appropriate for Hamilton to brag that they had a booklet too. This booklet is a sort of a resource which gives information to seniors about how to access housing that is appropriate for their needs. It gives checklists, it provides financial information, it's safety tips, and a housing search list. What we want to do today is to tell you that we have a list of people that we're going to give our housing booklet. It looks like this. Yes, that's what we want Hamilton to look like once, you know, in future, with palm trees and all. So the list, we have a list of 250 agencies, organizations, and individuals which we thought have contact with seniors, and our intent is to give them a copy personally of this booklet. We also, want to tell you that we have this available on the city website. Thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope it's brought some positive feeling amongst us.
That's wonderful. Are there any questions? I do have one invitation. If I could please pass the chair over to Councillor Johnson.
Please go ahead.
I would like to extend the invitation to you, as I did to the other service providers, given your advocacy role, to sign on to the letter that I'll be presenting to the province that speaks directly to housing and our homelessness and housing plan. I would love to have the seniors included in that. And so I'll put that invitation out there and follow up with your liaison. I believe it might be Councillor Jackson is on the board there. Is that correct?
Yes.
I know he's always fighting for seniors issues, Mr. Chair. So through you, if I could just extend that invitation, we would love to have you sign on to that open letter to the province to make sure that they adequately fund our housing shortages. So,
Councillor Green, about 4 years ago, I sat on the Ontario Seniors Secretariat as chair, and one of the things I noticed was Hamilton was on the outskirts of everything that they had there, and every time I'd say, what about Hamilton? You see, so it's timely. I think we should have done it long ago, and I hope this swell does the necessary. And I will definitely advocate on our senior advisory that they not only sign, but the organizations and that they are, connected with would sign on to.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for indulging me.
Thanks, Councillor Green.
So I'll take the chair back.
Councillor Green, I noticed that just before I hand you back, I noticed that we are lacking quorum.
Correct.
So we cannot vote.
We will
right now.
we will defer the vote on this.
So do you mind we give it out anyway without a vote, since it's such a positive thing?
What's that? What do you want to call it? How would you?
I said, can we give it out anyway?
Oh, we're going to vote on it. We're just going to vote on it in about 10 minutes once somebody returns back.
Okay.
So at this point, rather than have you stand here, we're going to move on to other business, come back to it, vote on it. But thank you so much for your presentation.
I was just trying to, this is my senior prerogative.
Yes, you do have that. I got the gavel here for you. So at this time, is it possible to move on to discussion items without receiving that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So at this time, I would like to move to item 8.1, which is a fee waiver reduction policy from the City of Hamilton. How about you take the chair for 1 second?
I'm now chairing.
You are now the chair.
Did you wish to? Yes. I will amuse you with stories of times. Picture it, Sicily, 1910. Thank you. I credit the Golden Girls for what wisdom I possess. Thank you.
Was it a good joke?
Thanks.
You didn't lose any viewers.
Thank you. Councillor Green, I will pass the chair back to you.
Thank you very much. So I guess while we have this moment, we do have a quorum will be arriving here shortly. If you could perhaps, if I can have staff comment on our position officially, any work that you've done with the ministry pre-budget consultation, is there an opportunity for upper level governments with this new government? Could I just get an overview?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, which item are we discussing at this point?
We're discussing quorum. Okay. I'll refer, you know what, I'll bring that up another time. Thank you. So on the topic of item 7.1, which is the Seniors Advisory Committee. So do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make.
Okay.
Very long time. I've never met a person who's more dedicated and committed to this community on many, many fronts. And now she's certainly championing seniors issues and walks within the community. She sat on the community council in Ward 8. She's an incredible individual, and she still continues to give back to this community, a former teacher. I just want to highlight that, with all due respect, individuals like you make our community better, and I want to thank you for continuing your support of this community.
Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to move that it be received, seconded by Councillor Marula? All those in favor? Carried. Excellent. We're now on to discussion items 8.1, which is the fee. So moved? Moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Johnson. On that point of, Councillor, okay. All those in favor? Carried. I would like to offer the opportunity to Councillor Jackson, who I do know was doing double duty and had to step out. Councillor Jackson, we did have your seniors come and present a fantastic report on housing. And just for the for your own records, I give them an invitation to review the letter that I have coming out regarding housing to add a seniors component. So I'll be working with you on that to find the proper wording to add into it to make sure that we have seniors housing. So thank you so much for your work around that file.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Thanks to the committee. Had overlapping duties in room 222 within our delegation. Carol Ann, John, thank you, and Lisa on staff. And Mr. Chairman, by the way, with youth advisory, I was saying to Councillor Marula, this was the type of thing I was hoping that through our youth, and I know we're going to get there, to get them engaged, this kind of product and this kind of service, pamphlet, booklet, that would be valuable to youth. I'm proud of what the seniors do for many seniors in our community, otherwise who just couldn't be able to do these type of things and need the advocacy. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll have you know, I certainly personally made that reference while you were away on your behalf. So we are now on to item 8.2. We moved to item 8.1.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Just as a point of order for that, item 8.2 rather, we do have some items that need to be received, primarily the correspondence from Tom Cooper, the letter from Karen Efron, and the petition.
So you've heard the items of correspondence as listed by the clerk. Move to receive. We have Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All those in favor? Carried. I would like to, I know we've had a full discussion on that, but at this point in time that we are in the discussion item 8.2, can we open it up to staff to comment on it, or are there any direct questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think from my perspective, Jillian was incredibly thorough. We touched upon the key components, particularly surrounding some of the concerns. I'll leave it up to Jillian if she wants to add more information to that. I'm comfortable supporting what's before us. I will move it accordingly. And I want to thank staff not only for being so thorough in the report, but also dealing with some of the, I think, issues where they question some aspects of the report.
Yeah, agreed. And you know, just to support that, we want to make sure you have the opportunity to respond to any of the delegation statements that were made or add anything else, and then we'll have the discussion about the report. Ms. Priel.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to make it clear that staff this is not about the valuable, to offer a financial management program in the community that's more targeted. You can see that staff are totally on board for that. It's the fact of the matter, as Councillor Merle said, we had $3.7 million, we had $8.5 million worth of asks, and we had to make some tough decisions, and they were many. The why, Elizabeth Fry, helping our Housing Help Center, a long list of very valuable services in the community. The issue is not whether we support a financial management program. It's a fact that we, same as other programs, we have no funding available for this and numerous other valuable programs in the community.
The bottom line, I think, and that's a really valid point, in that there was a perception that this particular program itself was being targeted, when in reality there were additional millions of programs that fell into that same category. So that's something that we need to really focus in on, because that's the crux of the problem, and not those that are imagined. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Jillian. Carmen mentioned about, I support your staff recommendation, by the way, fully. Just a really unfortunate type of situation that often the municipality ends up holding a bag that needs a lot more cash in it. Going forward, as we're exploring any and all possibilities, Carmen Salsiccioli had mentioned about a reduced type of program that would target, I guess, the most hardship cases with less impact on the local levy, hypothetically. Is that just something that, again, the ideal scenario is going for senior levels of government to be greater players at the table, and I support that. But looking at all possible hypothetical options, is that something you would take under advisement in the future, Mr. Chairman, through you to Jillian, or is that just a non-starter because we're, in essence, still with the same type of problem financially?
Through the chair, we do agree with Carmen in that I think that our community would benefit from having a financial management support program, a much more targeted one, and one that would focus on those people, preferably for a shorter rather than a longer time, who would benefit from this type of service. And Appendix A does provide you with a financial management support program model, which provides you with the difference between the current model and what we suggest for the future. And we are estimating that it would cost about $150,000, which is considerably less than the current program, and also that we would do this for a call for application process through a single agency rather than the 3 agencies that are providing that now, if there was available funding. At this point in time, there is no additional funding over with CHIPPY funding, which is the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative. We are developing a list of priorities, because there are several priorities that have come before this committee that we have to consider, but it would certainly be close to the top.
So, Jillian, thank you. So under CHIPPY, or if additional revenue sources were to unfold, you're saying this is something that would be taken under advisement. You already got this on the radar as a possible realignment of the program. Mr. Chairman, through to Jillian.
Through the councillor.
That correctly?
Yes, councillor, you interpreted it correctly.
Thanks so much, Jillian. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have Councillor Whitehead and then myself.
Thank you. A couple things. I mean, to me, it's about efficiency of programming, and I'm not sure what the best model is, because everyone believes that their model is the best. And I'm not going to be in the position to argue with them. But I know that, I heard issues in regards to rent and not paying rent that well. We have the McQuestion Legal Clinic that are experts in facilitating tenants. So there are bed bugs. We embarked on a pretty extravagant program and advocacy and so forth on the bed bug program. So I guess I'm having some challenges in understanding really what the trustee role is, because there are other overlaps here with a lot of the things I heard here today. So I want to ensure that we clearly identify those other supports and services that can cover that whole array of things that really don't fall into specifically the scope of what a trustee is supposed to be doing. The second piece that really troubles me is when you talk about acumen, my understanding is that, and I think it was articulated earlier, that there's the what's it called, something in Trustee Act. Is that correct? Public Guardian and Trustee Act. So I'm trying to understand whether or not there should be amendments to that particular act. Should there be, or should we consider amendments to that act? Because clearly, if people don't have the challenges, then they should fall into some category that they get permanent support and assistance. Those others that do not fall into that category, I'm trying to understand. I mean, they'd have family members, I would imagine, in some cases. Some they won't. I appreciate that. But I'm also trying to understand if they have some acumen and they don't fall in that other category. And I haven't seen any data, but how many of these individuals are currently being nurtured off the trustee program so that they can deal with other people coming in the waiting list? So from an outcome point of view, I'm trying to understand, is this sort of, okay, we're going to provide you a service forever and a day, or is this about providing them the skill sets and the comfort and the confidence to deal with those everyday issues? I just try to understand that.
Through the chair, certainly the more targeted financial management support program that we are suggesting, should there be available funding, would be an appropriate replacement, is very targeted, and that it would focus on those people who are first not eligible for the Ontario Public Guardian and Trustee program. So that would be first, and certainly anybody who is eligible for that program, and they're few and far between, unfortunately, would be referred there. And what you are saying about all the various programs that are out there, I know that at this point in time, the trusteeship program provides a lot of referrals and supports to other programs. And so they play the role of a navigator to a certain extent to all the various programs that are out there. But I do agree with you that the goal of the program would be to help people stabilize, whether it be paying their debts, getting paid direct, a variety of things like that, with the ultimate goal of maybe a year on the program and then graduating on to financial independence.
I appreciate that, and that's what I want to hear. I mean, I think We want to help as many people as we practically can. We want to make sure that they have the tools. We want to build their confidence and empower them. That's what the whole Civil Liberties Act was all about. That's what deinstitutionalizing individuals in our community was all about. Was about empowerment. Now, empowerment doesn't come without support. And I'm hoping that those that be clearly identified as people that have the acumen and need the assistance to build towards that confidence level so that we can roll them through and then deal with others that might find themselves in the same situation. That's the preference I have in regards to looking for outcomes. So if you're indicating that that's what the purpose of the $150,000 program is, I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to pass the chair over to Councillor Johnson so I can ask a few questions. Councillor Johnson, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
So through you to Jillian, and I have to give a little bit of a preamble because I think it's important to note for people that are viewing, oftentimes they'll read a headline or get a sound clip or some kind of sound bite off the media without really having access to the same type of reports that we have. So anybody watching and listening, I'll be uploading this report to my website so you can know what we know. But I would like for a minute if you could refer to the historical background. And in particular, what I have to say, and having received through you, Mr. Chair, the criticism that you did regarding this report, I think as the chair, very important that we outline the historical background so that people have a clear understanding how long this conversation has been had and where perhaps some of these agencies might have fallen short along the way as well. And so if you could refer to the second paragraph, that during 2010 and 11, the City of Hamilton contacted the Ministry of Community Services Workplace Solutions to MCC, which I believe is a consultant, to complete an evaluation of the trusteeship program. The evaluation made a series of recommendations to improve program delivery. So this is just to clarify, this is well before any of the CHIPPY funding changed. This was just when it was on its own. Is that correct through you, Mr. Chair?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And so this company, if you can just speak to perhaps the evaluation of the program at that time, going back to 2011, what some of the recommendations might have been.
Through the chair, some of the recommendations were that there be a clear assessment process for people entering the program, that they establish and implement data collection and evaluation plans, and that the data will show that the program goals have been achieved. In other words, that it is focusing in on just this financial management support program that we are talking about for the future, that people be assessed, goals be set, and that they eventually graduate from the program. So the three agencies certainly began work on this, but we would say that the various recommendations that we had weren't ever fully implemented.
And that is, in fact, for the reference for those that are home that don't have this is page 3 of the staff report, that recommendations were made but not met. This is going back 5 years. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And so, for example, and this is what was troubling for me, and I think if we're going to have the conversation, we need to have it fully with all the information. What was troubling for me, and I'd like for you to comment on, is that the program has yet to establish and implement data collection and evaluation plans that identify specific measures, data collection procedures, and how the data will show that the program goals have been achieved. If you could comment on that, because we had the previous speaker, Councillor Whitehead, talk about outcomes. If you could just comment generally to that, then I think that would be important just for the sake of those that might be watching or the media present to have full information.
Through the chair, all I can say at this point in time that the recommendations haven't been implemented, even though they have certainly been making efforts in the past month to implement a risk management tool.
But that is within the past month, kind of leading into when funding was going to be cut, when recommendations were made in 2011. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Through the chair, and these are challenging conversations, but I think it's important for the general public and the media present to have all the information that we have at council and at this committee, so when we make decisions, people are informed as to why we make these decisions. And so, just to clarify, have staff to this point been able to collect data that show program goals have been achieved? I'm just asking about the data and the reporting methods.
Through the chair, I would just like to be confident that I'm giving you the correct information. And so if you would just give us a couple of minutes, or if we would be able to come back with that information, I would appreciate it.
The reason why I bring those up is because when we're taking on these controversial topics, Mr. Chair, and we're reading not just the headlines or the news clips or the opinions that might be on, radio or the internet or anywhere else, that we're doing it with full information from staff, and that when we have shifts in funding, that it creates this type of chaos that we have where people want to put the responsibility onus on the municipality, the tax levy, when we have, as identified today, potentially service agencies that might have reserves, when we've had ongoing conversations that may have provided space for approval under this new framework. And so for me, that's important. Those are important points. My last question, and you know what, through you, Mr. Chair, I'll even withdraw that question so as not to put staff in an awkward situation. It is in the report, so I just want to read it as face value as it's been read. You don't even need to answer that. But my last question with that regards is the priority for housing first, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. If staff could comment on the ripple effect that the municipality has faced when prioritizing capital dollars, operating dollars, with putting beds online, i.e. taking people off the streets, adequately funding our capital responsibilities as mandated for city housing? I withdrew the question, Mr. Chair, just so they know. I don't want to put staff, and I do apologize if I put staff in an awkward situation. I don't want to do that. It was in the historical context, but I don't even need to know because it's in the report. But what I'm asking right now is, with the shift to housing first, when, and through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Prio, because you are the director of this department, when we are mandated by the province to put more beds online as an acknowledgement to the policy of housing first for poverty reduction, can you just comment to the ripple effects that it's had on all of our support services and programs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly, as a matter of fact, when I was on the expert panel for homelessness and we talked about the changes in the provincial government's funding priorities and the federal government's to housing first, I said clearly to both ministers that were at that table, McMeekin and Deb Matthews, that the outcome of those changes was going to have a ripple effect in our community, and there was going to be lots of very valuable programs that would not be funded anymore. So.
And
yes.
Again, for the sake of the media present, public, and people who might be watching, what are we mandated to provide in terms of new beds, new housing for people? Just so people can understand a sense of the overall pressure that we're under to take people off the streets. What are we supposed to be aiming for?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I might need Julian's help on that, but definitely housing first, which means that we get people housed first. Second to that would be, I guess, homelessness prevention programs, but the priority of both the federal government and the provincial government is those programs that will get people immediately housed and keep them there.
I apologize. Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think I framed the question right.
Sorry.
In my preliminary research for writing my own personal letter to the ministry advocating for housing, I came across, I think the figure was 300 new units online. If you could comment, if maybe I'm mistaken, if I read something wrong about what our mandate is to actually effectively.
And that target in terms of our population increase, and therefore that was the number of affordable housing units that we needed to bring online every year to meet the targets from that the province gave us in terms of population growth.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I think what gets me up, what gives me anxiety, having housing be my #1 priority, where are we with that? Like, what did we put online last year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Julian, what number of affordable housing units did we bring on last year?
In 2015, we didn't add any new construction in affordable housing. There are 90 units that are currently being constructed through Good Shepherd and Indwell, and also one of the co-ops. But in 2015, there was no approval for the new construction of affordable housing.
And I guess what has me perplexed, Mr. Chair, through you, is that knowing these pressures, knowing the service agencies that are also understanding these pressures because they're in the business of providing affordable housing and probably understand the file as well, if not better than everybody else, there has been a provincial mandate to shift from some of the supports that were previously funded, and you can see back in 2002, these were actually fee-for-service programs. They've evolved into tax levy programs or throw-through programs. And the focus is 100% on putting new beds online and getting people off the street. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't say it's not just totally new beds, but it's getting people housed.
Correct.
So getting them into current, housing situations. But it's about getting people homes and houses to live in.
So is there a little bit of a contradiction perhaps that I'm sensing in terms of what I'm hearing with regards to some of these support programs, making people homeless versus our priority to house people, as well as the service agency's role in housing those people?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, there's a purpose for it all in terms of getting people housed, preventing people from being housed, and in terms of or homeless. But in terms of that, there's issues around income, there's issues around jobs, there's issues around financial management strategy. There's all those programs and services that prevent homelessness as well.
Reduce homelessness with a housing first strategy. What was our mandate in terms of putting, am I off by saying 300?
To you, Mr. Chair, that number, I believe, Jim can correct me wrong, but came from the grids, the growth.
The budget was fixed in 2015 when they got the one-time funding, and yet we have agencies come back for one time on top of one time when they know our hands are tied. That's my challenge, fundamentally, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, to know that you have been put in an impossible situation, that we are in some spaces legislating poverty through social assistance that's not keeping up with inflation, that we're not having courage around things like inclusionary zoning or Section 37 that would demand that some of the development that happens here result in affordable housing and inclusionary zoning. And so that's the kind of conversation that I'd love to have in 2016 is how can we work together with service care providers to effectively get sustainable funding for these programs and get this on the agenda for the provincial budget. Those are my questions and comments at this time. I'll close it and I'll take the chair back.
Thanks, Councillor Green.
Are there any other questions or comments? We have Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, well, just on the record, I had the opportunity to open up a brand new Hamilton housing, I think it was 120 units, if I remember right, on Paradise. So there wasn't 120 units that came online last, I believe it was in September, if I remember right, when the grand opening was. So that wasn't identified, so I want to put that as a matter of public record. And secondly, Mr. Chair, and staff know this, they know this well. We marched through, Councillor DeVelle and I, through a number of housing units, Hamilton housing units, where individuals were put into those homes and completely destroyed them. In fact, they're off the market and can't be used. And my issue isn't with those clients. The issue is the fact that we didn't provide the appropriate services and supports to ensure that those clients were taken care of. And so when I hear Hamilton first, I will continue harken back to the fact that you can't just shove people into housing and expect that we're not going to create larger problems without the appropriate supports. It just doesn't happen. So can I ask this question through the chair to Joanne? In the Hamilton housing first, when we're talking about mental health issues, we're talking about supports. What does that mean in regards to the province of Ontario in respect to funding? How they incorporate that into the Hamilton House First philosophy?
Through the chair, I understand what you're saying about the units that were, which are currently out of commission because they have been damaged. I think that we have to be careful not to assume that those people were Housing First tenants. I would say that clients who are part of the Housing First program, and there are 4 Housing First programs in Hamilton. There's one for women called SOS, one for men called Transitions to Homes, one for youth called Youth Housing First, as well as one for the Aboriginal community called Homeward Bound. And we do have a target of 121 individuals, so these would be people who use the shelters on a chronic basis and who definitely, many of whom have mental health and addiction issues, are being housed with the appropriate supports. And so far, I believe our target, we're close to meeting our target of 101 individuals. But that does not preclude the fact that there are not adequate supports out there for individuals, for tenants who do have mental health issues, and certainly seniors who are aging in place and require more supports than they've ever had before.
I appreciate that. I know that when I met with the minister, I also indicate that you can't just throw people in housing without the appropriate support, so they go hand in hand. So I wanted to highlight that I'm not in here just to house people. I'm here to make sure that the people we house are properly taken care of. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Seeing as that there's none, may I please have a motion? Is it on this is a discussion item? There are recommendations on the floor, right? Yeah.
And actually, if I may.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I would like to add that we write to the Prime Minister of Canada in addition to the Premier, because it is the case that the province of Ontario is struggling financially just as the municipality is. And it's also the case that we now have a federal government that was elected on an anti-austerity platform and that has a different kind of social conscience than the previous federal government. So therefore, I think there may be hope that through one ministry or another, the federal government may be able to provide some help for homelessness as a national issue, which of course it is. So that would be my suggestion. So I would move the motion that we implement the recommendation made in the staff report for council to have Mayor Fred write to the Premier and the named ministers, as well as the Prime Minister of Canada, regarding the contents of the report and the concerns that we've discussed. That would be my motion, and I would love to have a seconder.
I'll second it, and I want to amend it. It's a friendly amendment that copies of that go to AMO and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as well, and the members of Parliament, local members of Parliament.
So that's moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we're now on to motions. We have no motions, but a notice of motion with a motion to waive the rules.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a notice of motion before me, and I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to put a motion to waive the rules so I can introduce the notice as a motion. And that's seconded by Councillor Jackson.
Excellent. So we have a notice to waive the rules, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor?
Carried.
On the notice of motion, to waive the rules.
That is.
Yes.
And what's before us is, whereas, move ourselves by Councillor Jackson, whereas Section 3.1 of the city's Housing and Homelessness Action Plan supports the development of different types of housing with personalized supports for individuals with mental health, addictions, and health issues and a history of homelessness. Whereas there is an existing need in Hamilton for more stable and affordable housing options that provide the supports necessary to avoid homelessness and the need to resort to more costly interventions such as emergency shelter system, emergency health care services, and correctional system. Whereas NWEL, an established not-for-profit organization with a strong track record of developing and delivering housing with supports, has submitted a proposal to operate Strathern Suites, a 39-unit permanent supported housing initiative combining affordable housing with flexible on-site supports that contribute to housing and health stability for Hamilton's most vulnerable residents, whereas the Hamilton, Niagara, Haldeman Brant Local Health Integration Network through St. Joseph's Healthcare has committed to contributing $498,981 of annual base funding towards a total annual cost of $1,057,062 operate Strathern Suites on the condition that the City of Hamilton also participate in the partnership by contributing an annual base funding of $150,000 a year. Therefore, be it resolved that the City enter into an agreement with NWEL, the Hamilton, Niagara, Haldeman Brant Local Health Integration Network, and St. Joseph's Healthcare to provide annual base funding of $150,000 for operation of 39 new units of affordable housing with the supports. B, the city initial funding comes, the social services we should reserve to offset operational costs for the 2016 fiscal year. C, that the general manager of community emergency services be authorized and directed to execute the agreement required to give effective two resolutions, A and B above, in a form satisfactory to both the city solicitor and the general manager of finance and corporate services. B, the mayor and clerk be directed to correspond with Patrick Meekin, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, to request an increase in funding community homelessness prevention initiative to adequately fund and expand innovative models of supportive housing, such as veteran suites. And I must, if I can add, with this particular motion is the third project that I've been personally involved with Annual. Ward 4 has done more than its share when it comes to affordable housing, actually the most in the entire city. But I can say that I'm not only proud of Annual, I'm also proud of my community for having supported each and every one of those projects and more to come in the future. One thing that I must say is the sophistication of understanding that affordable housing is an investment in the community is something that the residents of Ward 4 embrace. They may not have embraced originally or initially, but we've come a long, long way, and I look forward to the continued partnership with Enwell. The future of affordable housing, particularly this vulnerable demographic, is really going to be addressed within this type of model. It's innovative and something that the province, and we'll see province-wide in the next short while. The province has committed. We need more from them. But as you can see, our involvement does open up a significant amount of money from the provincial government. So not only are we putting a dent into the affordable housing demand, but we're also being leaders in a model that surely will become province-wide, if not national, when dealing with this vulnerable group. And I just want to thank Jeff Nevin, who's here today, for his community involvement, advocacy, and professionalism in addressing what we all know is a crisis in the city. And it's not just affordable housing, but this is affordable housing for the most marginalized in our community. And for that, I applaud their efforts. Thank you.
Excellent. You have a seconder? I'm happy to. We have Councillor Jackson. With the second, the motion is on the floor. We have Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, thank you. And I certainly appreciate that they do great programs, but it's a process that really concerns me. We do a call out. When we put calls out, we fund those calls based on the needs in our community. What this is an organization going out and doing their own thing and coming in here and putting their hand out and saying, look, we've done a lot of great work, give us $150,000. So it's sort of bypassing a more comprehensive process and determining the needs of our community. And I'm not suggesting that this is a negative problem. It's great. My concern is that from a process point of view, is that's how we're going to start doing business in the city of Hamilton, is that people, they go in and embark on their program, they get the funding, and they know full well they don't have all the funding in place, and so they'll come out to the city of Hamilton and say, you pick up the balance of it because we've done all this. But that's the new process in doing business in the city of Hamilton. Just let me know now, and then I certainly will sit down with staff and try to understand whether there's merit in taking that approach. I thought the way we did housing and meeting the needs of this community, we put calls out, we put bids in, we make it a competitive process in ensuring that we're getting the best value for the dollars that we're expending. I'm not suggesting we're not here. I want to make that clear. I know that they're a great program. I'm just concerned about the slippery slope in the way that this has come forward. Thank you.
If you could, I'm going to pass the chair.
No, if I could speak.
If just 2 seconds, please. Thank you. I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Marula. And certainly there's a motion, Councillor Whitehead, that's coming to address that issue. But if I could just for a moment, through you, Mr. Marula, to staff, if you can just identify, because I didn't read this motion as it being coming to council looking for $150K. I look at them coming for, with basically $850,000 and needing this partnership, which is time sensitive, which is why we're trying to leverage this opportunity to meet all the needs of the things we just spent the last 2 hours talking about. So through you, Mr. Marula, to Jillian, can you comment on the uniqueness of this particular opportunity, the value that's being provided by the other partnerships, and I'll speak to my motion after this passes to make sure that we have the processes in place for Councillor Whitehead. But could you speak to that, please?
Yes, the Strathern Suite, as is being put forward, is certainly, I would see, as an excellent demonstration project as far as offering people individual units, which means that they have their own apartments, plus fairly intensive supports to go along with it. So what is unique about this as well is that the LHIN, which is the Local Health Integration Network, through St. Joseph's Healthcare, has approved the amount of $498,981 per year, but only on the condition, so they wanted Indwell to leverage that funding and that the city also be a partner in this and contribute some funding as well, which is $150,000 a year. And also on top of that, the province requested that Indwell also get charitable donations as well. And so also there is a private contribution to this. So I would say that this is unique. The targeted population is also housing first clients, people who are chronic shelter users with mental health issues who are very hard to house, certainly with supports. So that is why this motion has been put forward.
So, just to kind of reiterate that, if you could, and I know if you do the quick math, so the province puts in 500,000, we put in 150, 640, so they've raised on their own roughly $350,000 to put forward to this?
Through the chair, I should also add the total annual cost of $1,057,062 would also include the rental revenue of the tenants.
Okay. So it's a pilot project that will speak hopefully to my next motion. I have no further questions. I'm satisfied this is the direction, the priority that we're heading in. And I think this is a good opportunity to explore ways that agencies and upper levels of government can work with the city to make sure that we stretch that tax dollar as far as we can to get the most amount of value. So, Councillor Marula, I'll take that back. You are on the speaker's list, second time.
Thank you. And just want to elaborate on a couple of things. Firstly, it is, I guess, out of the normal process because it is so innovative, unique, progressive. Also, I'm glad to hear that Councillor Whitehead sounds somewhat envious of it. So I presume Edinburgh will take notice. We'll seek out a site in Ward 8. Because, as I mentioned, Ward 4 has done our share, but I'm glad to see that publicly Councillor White supports this type of project in Ward 8, and I will move accordingly that we seek out a site with the assistance of the Ward Councillor. That's seconded by Councillor Jackson. Thank you.
So we already have a motion on the floor. Your original motion is on the floor. You had the second time speakers. We have Councillor Whitehead with the second time speaker.
I think the issue for me is when you build partnerships, you build at the front end of a process. You don't build it at the end of a process. I've never been taught that you come in at the end and say, I need $150,000 for this program without engaging us at the front end of the process in regards to that partnership. So maybe through the chair to staff, did we make any financial commitment when we know full well that they were building this a number of years ago?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we were part of the discussion, I think, early last year, in June, where the proposal was brought forward. We were waiting actually because we were waiting for the province to make their significant commitment first before we waded in. So we were part of the discussion right up at the end, as the city manager was, et cetera, other people in the community. So we were part of the discussion right when it began in its early days. But we were not going to commit our funding, which is small in comparison to the rest of it, until the province had clearly indicated their support for the project.
So the point is that we could have committed on the basis that the other funding partners came to the table, which is normally the course of action. We didn't even do that. Well, I just heard that we didn't. We were waiting to see what the province did. We could have said we could move forward at the front end of this process and said we're prepared to spend X relative to the federal or provincial or other partners coming to the table and providing wine. We didn't do that. I guess my concern, Madam Chair, and this is a great program, and I because it is a process issue. My concern, and this is what the concern is, I don't want organizations going out and building things without getting us involved at the front end of a process, only to put their hand out with the bill and the motions of having these units built and no funding or not enough funding to validate it or substantiate it or sustain it. And so I guess my concern was how normally we're there at the front end of a process, front end of a project, or front end of a pilot program, which this one is because it is unique, and I grant you that. The problem was we weren't partners at the front end of it. We're just becoming partners now.
Councillor, I do have a motion to remedy that, and when I read it, if you agree with the statement after this, maybe you'll support it and second it. Okay, so at this point, I say we just call the question. Sure.
Just because then it's being perceived, they're coming here with a handout. It's the province dictating to them that they must seek out these funds from the city. So that needs to be clarified, just for the public record, and I'll call the question now.
Yes, okay, the question has been called on the motion, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. Excellent. I also have we'll maybe table that for another time. If we could at this time, also, I'd like to waive the rules, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jackson, that the rules of order be waived to allow for consideration of a motion at today's Community Emergency Service meeting respecting opportunities to develop new affordable housing. So there are a bunch of whereases. The motion is before you. I should pass this over. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you very much. I would like
Please to chair. Thank you, Councillor Green. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. There are a number of whereases, but I will get to the therefore be it resolved because it will speak to some of the earlier questions that were raised. That the City of Hamilton Housing Services Division staff be directed to work with the city's procurement division staff and planning division staff to develop a process to establish a roster of nonprofit and private developers prepared and qualified to deliver new affordable housing with supports in Hamilton in partnership with the city to be able to respond to future and periodic development and capital funding opportunities and report back to emergency and community services detailing the process. And if I could take a moment to speak to that, the creative nature at which this project came forward, I am of the opinion of this being the direction probably moving forward, multiple partnerships as identified by yourself, Mr. Chair, between the federal government, the province, municipalities, but also service agency providers and developers to create this space to help fill the social pressure that we have on housing. This motion allows staff to be nimble, to have shovel-ready projects that I think are a requirement for municipal, federal, and provincial capital funding. As you know, members of committee, that when this money comes, it comes particularly quick. And so it would allow those that are already in this work, some of the folks that were here today and unfortunately left, it would have been good for them to be present to hear this opportunity, but hopefully they'll see it on the live stream, to be able to engage with the city now to take care of the most vulnerable people that they so passionately advocated for not too long ago, but in a much more full, sustainable, and substantive way. So that is the spirit of this proposal, this motion. In a perfect world, to my councillor colleagues, this would have come earlier. But the reality, as identified by Councillor Marula, is we didn't know this until we saw it. So now that we've seen this space and how it could potentially work, let's put it into our process, let's make it a part of our system, and let's be a leader in the province for providing affordable housing. Those are my comments on this particular process. I'd like to commend staff and Councillor Marula, Indwell, for being able to work this out as a template, really a test case, a pilot for how this stuff should look like moving forward. Those are my comments.
Thanks very much, Councillor Green. I'll hand the chair back to you.
Nope, you keep it until the vote.
Oh, till the vote.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do need a vote on the waiving of the procedure. We do have a mover and a seconder. We just need to vote.
Marula has waived it, and Whitehead is seconding it, and all in favor? Carried. And Councillor Whitehead has a question.
The question, I think, again, it's great. We have a new innovative program that hasn't been proven yet. So normally, in any pilot program, you review it in a year and 3 years, whatever the timeframes are identified. We haven't had the opportunity to do that. So I guess my concern is we're already moving to emulate something that hasn't been proven yet and yet to be evaluated. So I like the concept. I guess my concern is we just admitted it's a pilot program, and yet we already want to emulate something that hasn't been determined. So I guess my concern is I like the concept. I just don't know if it's premature to be doing that until we have at least a year review on this current model.
Councillor Green, would you like to respond?
I would. And understanding the nature of upper levels of government, understanding that we have 5,681 people that are already on a waiting list, my concern is that if we're slow out of the gate on this one, when the province and the federal governments align, when those stars align, we're going to be left. So we can wait for reports, we can wait for the perfect opportunity, and it's going to be too late because at the end of the day, there'll be other municipalities that are more politically at the table than we are that will take advantage, full advantage of this federal funding that's going to come. And I am of the opinion, and I think there's a lot of pundits out there that are of the opinion, this particular federal government has committed to this, and their style tends to involve different levels of government. So, and they also tends to involve private sector. So that's why this is time sensitive. I believe that our planning division and our staff, and if we're being honest, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair, there is a very limited number of qualified people who have been doing this work anyways. They're here. All we want to do is make sure we can align these projects so that we don't get people bogged down in coming to community emergency services and then going to planning concurrently successively when we can do it concurrently. So that's the direction and the urgency of this, that when those stars aligned, we want to make sure Hamilton remains a leader in housing. Does that fully satisfy?
Thank you very much. And now, Councillor Marula has called the question.
No, I'm sorry. We
Pardon
need a
me, Madam
seconder
Clerk.
on that motion. We have Councillor Green as moving it. Thank you.
Councillor Marula with the second.
Great. So all in... We've waived the rules.
This is on the motion.
All in favor of the motion, please indicate.
Carried.
Carried. That is unanimous, and I pass the chair back to Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. We have a motion to adjourn. Moved. All those in favor? Carried.